Hey, what's up, everybody? DFS Rico coming at you with my picks for this Week 2 NFL DraftKings slate. I think it's a 13 gamer. It's for Week 2. Should be a good slate. We got some of the best quarterbacks on this slate. Some pretty good game stacks. I'll be running through some of my favorite picks at each position. This will probably be more so for like smaller contests, but I will try to throw in some GPP plays that I do like, some pivots that I like. But before I get into it, if you guys could please like, comment, subscribe, I really do appreciate it. And plus, I will be using timestamps in the bottom, so if you want to scroll to like quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, I will include that in the bottom of the screen so you guys can navigate the video a lot easier. But yeah, let's get to it. So just gonna jump right into the quarterbacks. Um, we got some good quarterbacks on the slate. We got obviously Lamar Jackson up top at 8.2K versus Houston in a game where I do expect him to play very well. Um, never anything wrong with stacking Jackson with Andrews or Brown, obviously. But I do like him. I like Mahomes. There's just some cheaper quarterbacks that I do like with good upside. One thing you will know, usually in quarterbacks, the gap between like the best play of the day to the 10th, fifth best play of the day isn't as huge as gaps with like running backs and receivers. Like if you go back to even last week, if you go to the top play as a receiver for like Devontae Adams down to the 10th place guy, it was probably like a 20-point difference. If you do like Lamar, like the top play last week at quarterback to like the 5th or 10th best play, it's only like a 5 to 8 point difference. It's not that big. So I usually like paying down at quarterback. I mean, obviously in GPPs, Jackson and Mahomes will be popular. I think they won't be as popular in smaller contests, but or single entries, but they're fantastic plays. I don't have an issue with any of them. They're both great plays. Um, but going down, I like Rodgers, obviously pairing him with Devontae Adams. You got Prescott in a really good matchup versus Atlanta. Probably one of the best games on the slate if you do want to stack. I could see myself stacking either side of the game. Amari Cooper is playing. I know there was worries that he might not play. He's playing. Pairing Prescott up with a guy like Gallup, even Lamb or Cooper is a good way to go. One or two of those guys would work out just fine. They have obviously a really good matchup. We saw what Russell Wilson did to them last week. I don't see why Prescott can't do the same thing. And Prescott plays much better at home. I don't know if he doesn't have his home crowd, but the splits between him home and away are huge. They're massive. Um, then you got Josh Allen in a good matchup versus Miami. I do like him, whether you want to stack him or just play him alone. He's one of those quarterbacks you can just play on his own without stacking because he does have that rushing upside, which can just benefit you without having to stack anybody with him. And then obviously Matt Ryan on the other side of that Dallas game, going against obviously Dallas, pairing him up with guys like Ridley or Jones isn't a problem, or even Hurst. Gage, I might shy away from Gage. I know he had 12 targets last week, but I think he comes down a little bit and Hurst gets a couple more of those targets this week. I could be wrong, but that's just going to be my play. I know people will probably play a little bit of Gage this week just based off of what happened last week. Brady's in a very good matchup versus Carolina. I know he didn't have the best first week. Still put up 22 fantasy points, which isn't bad at all. But he is going to be going against a very bad team. Evans looks like he's playing, and Godwin, as of right now, they were both questionable, but I think they both play. But just keep an eye out on that. I do like, so I don't like Deshaun Watson too much. This Baltimore defense is very good, but if you want to be different, he can be different. Big Ben is another guy that can be different. Matthew Stafford can be the same. That Green Bay defense is not that good. The Denver and Baltimore defense is pretty good still. And then we got Kyler Murray at 6.1. He's kind of the main guy I want to talk about. He's very underpriced and a really good matchup versus Washington. Put up 27.3 fantasy points last week against one of the best defenses. Had nearly 100 rushing yards, which was insane, in 13 attempts. If they're going to continue to roll him out that much and run him that much, I do have a lot of interest in Kyler Murray, especially in these smaller contests and like single entry, 3 entry. I like Kyler Murray. If you're only building one lineup, I do like him as a starting point for my lineups for sure. Um, but some other quarterbacks that I like, obviously Wentz against the Rams. I actually have some huge interest in GPPs. Jared Goff versus Philly at 5,800. I think he played a better defense in Dallas last week. Philly's not the best defense in my opinion. They played good against the Redskins, which isn't that impressive. Tannehill is going to be without A.J. Brown. I did just see that pop up. A.J. Brown is out So that will give bumps to some of the guys. Phillip Rivers could have a bounce back game. We did see what um, Aaron Rodgers did to them. I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers is way better than Phillip Rivers, but this Minnesota defense still is not good. Going back to last season, they're still not good. Nah, I'm going to stay away from Jones against Chicago, but I like Goff. I mean, just scrolling down, the only other guy I probably like is Trubisky. Um, I like Trubisky in this matchup versus the Giants. We saw what Big Ben did to him. Played very good against him. Trubisky did play better in that fourth quarter. Hopefully he does this from start to finish in this game because I do have a decent interest in him. But obviously, if you're just playing smaller contests, I like Murray. If you don't want to be too different, I like Murray. I like Allen, and I think I like Rodgers. Oh my god, I had to sneeze. Sorry guys. I can't edit that out. But I like Prescott and I like Ryan. I think Murray, Prescott, and Ryan are actually my favorite, followed by Allen and Rodgers. If you're playing smaller contests, and then if you're playing bigger contests, you obviously expand your pull out a little bit. But those are some of the quarterbacks that I like. Obviously Murray being one of my favorites, and then up at running backs. We got 10K Christian McCaffrey, very expensive. He was 10K last week too, and he did not perform well. We know this Tampa Bay defense, their run defense is what's the best part about the defense. Okay, he performed well, 28 fantasy points. Let me take that back. He performed well, but for what we need from him at 10K, he did not perform well. The Tampa Bay defense, their strength is the run defense, and I think they do a pretty good chan. I think Brady will be good at managing the game to try to keep McCaffrey off the field. Is my logic behind it, and there's just some cheaper backs that I like that I have the same similar upside as him. Barkley, not a big fan of him against Chicago, but he will be a different play if you do want to play him because a lot of ownership will be going to Elliott and Henry. Elliott in the matchup versus Atlanta. I did discuss that. Very good at 8.2K. I do prefer him over Barkley and McCaffrey. But the guy I do prefer a little more is Derrick Henry. We did just see AJ Brown is out, which probably means a little more attention towards Derrick Henry from the defense and from the offense in both senses. But 7.9K is just too cheap for a guy in a matchup versus Jacksonville. Derrick Henry is a beast. We know how good he is. He had 31 carries last week, 116 yards. He only averaged 3.7 per carry, and they were still just giving him the ball. They were just like, we're going to give you the ball no matter how many yards you get. He had some 1 yard carries, but eventually he starts getting going. He wears that defense down. That's just how he plays. No other player got a rush on the team other than Tannehill. So we know a lot of the concentration on the carries will just be going straight to Henry. And he did catch 3 passes, I believe, as well. I'm going to check that out. He had 3 targets for 3 passes, so that gives him a little more upside as well. But I do like the matchup versus Jacksonville. Very good amount. Henry will be a way I will be looking at a ton. Obviously, I don't have a problem with Elliott. It's really between Elliott and Henry for me when you want to pay up. Cook and Hilaire will be different if you want to be different. Hilaire looked like a stud the first week. 25 carries, 138 yards, 22.8 fantasy points. That was with no receptions. I think he gets a little more targets this week. But the Chargers defense is good, so I know people will shy away from it, but I feel like Kansas City, you can play them against anybody, and they will be lower owned for sure. Aaron Jones, I think he has a bounce back game. I mean, he had put up 17.6, but I think he has a better game this week versus Detroit. I do like him in this matchup a really good amount. It looks like Connor will be playing. He did practice fully yesterday and today, it seems like. So unless they change their mind, I assume he plays today, so that takes Blake Snell out of it. I know a lot of people had interest in him early on, but I assume that just removes him a little bit. Eckler at 6.5, same position. He got knocked down $500 going against Kansas City. He had, 0 receptions or 1 reception in that first game with 1 target. I don't see that continuing, in my opinion. Eckler should be getting, in games where they're behind, where I expect them to be behind in this game, I should see him get 8 targets at least, minimum. Like, I know that the coach was saying that he wants to utilize him less in the passing game, but that just doesn't make sense. That's just practically saying you want to lose when your best player is very good at catching out the backfield. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. They tried to do it game 1, and it wasn't the best performance. I think they would have probably scored more points if they utilized him better, but I think they learned from that, and they come out and they give him a little more catches, which will obviously give him more upside. Mostert versus the Jets would be a fine play. The Jets did a decent job at holding back Buffalo's running game, but I think Mostert's a little better than the running backs for the Jets. Um, Gurley, I think Atlanta plays from behind this game personally, so I'm not a huge fan of Gurley. Sanders is playing at 6K. I have a fairly good amount of interest in him. He seems like he's a full go. I was looking. He's 100% healthy, hopeful to handle a full workload. It doesn't. I don't think he they limit his snaps or anything. I think they need him out there. It's going to give a different aspect to the offense and make him look a lot better. And then you got Drake at 5.9K. This little area right here is really packed with some good running backs, in my opinion. I mean, you got Eckler, Drake, you got Sanders, uh, even Brown. He played good in that first game, 5.7. I think I do prefer Drake and Sanders in that matchup, but and then you got Taylor at 5.7K, which is probably going to be the highest owned player on the slate, which I do want to talk about the most. He had 9 carries that first game. We know Marlon Mack is out for the rest of the season. Marlon Mack is probably Jonathan Taylor is probably my favorite play on the slate. We saw him get 6 targets, 6 receptions. He's playing with Phillip Rivers. We know how much Phillip Rivers loves throwing to his running backs. Hines will be in there as well, obviously at 5.2K, 5.3K. But I do prefer Taylor. He is the starting back. He's the guy that will be out there in the first and second down, so I do prefer them. I do prefer Taylor over Hines. I know people will be playing Hines. If you want to be different, I recommend Hines. But I prefer Taylor. I do actually have some interest in Montgomery as well. I think if Snell could do what he did last week to the Giants, I don't see why Montgomery can't do the same. He's more of a GPP play because he is in the middle and surrounded by these really good backs in good positions like Taylor. I think people will gravitate towards Taylor, Sanders, and Drake. Montgomery could be a play to be different, I guess you could say. Scrolling down, Lindsey's questionable, looks like, but I don't really want to play anybody. We saw what Pittsburgh did to Barkley, and Barkley's way better than Gordon. The line's even better, so I'll just stay away from that. And the last guy I really want to talk about is Ronald Jones at 5.2 versus Carolina. We saw what Josh Jacobs did to this guy, to this defense last week. 3 touchdowns, 90-something yards. It was like 97 or 93. Looked very good. Ronald Jones did prove to us that he is their lead back. He had 17 attempts for 66 yards, 3 targets, 2 receptions. If they could give him that kind of workload again in this matchup, I don't see why he can't go over 80 yards, get us a touchdown. That 5.2K is a very good price for him. So I do have some interest in him for sure. I like Ronald Jones a really good amount in that matchup. But like I said, a lot of the ownership will go to Henry, Taylor, and Zeke, and then split up from there. Let's go over to wide receivers. We saw Devontae Adams was the highest scorer last week, 44.6 fantasy points. He got a bump, $800, I think. He's up there with the same price as Henry and Zeke and even Barkley. He's up there, man. He's higher than Cook. He's higher than running backs, which is crazy, but I think it's right. He's going to get the targets. He's going to get the looks. He had 17 targets in that first game. Even when they were winning by like 3 touchdowns, it seemed like they were still throwing the ball to him. Like, they didn't care. They're just trying to put up points. And he will, I feel like he's going to average like 13 targets a game, it feels like, at least. Like, minimum, it seems like. And in another game where I think it could be a high-scoring game if Detroit can put up points. I'm not sure if Galladay's playing. Let me check. He may practice. So he might not play. He might be out, but I think Stafford could put him in a good position. He's going against a weaker defense. Green Bay is weaker than Detroit, than Chicago. So I think if he could keep up in this game, I see Adams could have a huge game again. Pairing him up with Rodgers wouldn't be a bad idea. Then we got Hopkins at 7.7K. Pairing him up with Murray is not a bad idea. I do like that a fairly good amount, but he is 7.7. There's just some cheaper receivers in really good spots as well that you can pay down for. Tyreek Hill's obviously a GPP play. Julio Jones is questionable, but he's not worried. It seems like the coach is not too worried that he's going to miss, so he should be playing. If he does miss, obviously you give a bump to Ridley, Gage in that point in Hurst. I know I talked about Gage earlier, but if Julio Jones does miss, then obviously things change, you know. Adam Thielen, 7.2. He got a price up, I think, like 900. I think it was 67. No, he got 500 up. Looked very good in that first game. This Indiana defense wasn't the best. Indianapolis defense wasn't the best. So I like Thielen. Thielen is the main focal point in the passing game at least. I know they're a run first team, Minnesota, but I do like Thielen. a good amount if the game turns into a shootout. Godwin is questionable. Concussion. Ooh. Well, he's doubtful. So that will give a bump to Evans, maybe even Gronk, but Evans, Scotty Miller for sure. So that I will talk about him when I get a little lower, I guess. But I like Ridley obviously in this matchup versus Dallas. Pairing him up against like a stack of Prescott or just pairing him up with Ryan is a good way to go. I like Ridley a really good amount, especially just the matchup is going to be very good. Cooper Kupp versus Philly is good. More of a GPP play. Juju, Cooper, Diggs, Robinson are more GPP plays. I think you'll see a lot of Woods at 6.4 in this matchup. You will see a lot of Mike Evan in this matchup if he plays. This guy's limited as well. Who knows who plays from these guys? So keep an eye out on the Tampa receivers. But I assume Scotty Miller, Howard, Jones, a lot of these guys get some bumps if those any of those guys miss, honestly. So just keep an eye out on that. I do like Evans though at 6.4. He's just really underpriced. This pack of receivers right here is just in very good spots. Woods, Evans, Moore, Cooper, Fuller, Brown. Those guys all around the same price range. Cooper looks like he's playing. He practiced full, so he should play. I don't see why he doesn't. I did mention AJ Brown is out. Out of all these guys, I think I really like Fuller. Will Fuller. We saw what he did last week at 10 targets, 112 yards versus Kansas City. I assume in this game they play from behind as well again, and they fall behind, and they're gonna have to air the ball out. And Fuller seems like a legit #1 receiver. Hopkins has the best, the best. What's it called? I can't even think of the word, but they work very well together. They have the most experience together, so he knows the routes. He's a good receiver as well. He's not a bad receiver. He was just shadowed. He was behind Hopkins. I kept saying Hopkins. I think Watkins. Deshaun Watson. My bad. I'm tripping. Watson and Hopkins. Just combining them together on some Dragon Ball Z shit. But all right, keep going down. I do like Fuller, like I said in that. He's one of my favorite receivers, but you can't go wrong with any of these guys, depending on injuries. Obviously, Evans. I like Cooper in the matchup. You can easily swap him out for any of these guys in the middle, and I would be perfectly fine with any of those guys. Scrolling down, I mean, John Brown if you want to pair him with Allen. Even Diggs if you want to pair him with Allen. I like a lot of these receivers. Hilton, Keenan Allen. They're going to be GPP plays. A lot of people won't be on them compared just because what they did last week. Crowder is out. I do like Herndon. I don't really like any of the receivers on this team, but who knows? Anybody could show up with practically their best weapon on offense being out. But I'm still not a fan of the Jets, so it's kind of iffy. I like Miller at 5.2 for a GPP play. He received some targets last week. Like I said, if Trubisky could come out looking like he did in the fourth quarter for a whole game or at least half of the game, Miller should look even better. Has some better numbers, more targets, more looks. He's looking very good. Coming into the season, I know that a lot of the coaches were saying he was like he was looking the best on the field every single down, it seemed like, on the offensive end. Even better than anybody on the offense, anyone you could think of. But just going down, you got some cheap receivers that are actually in good spots. Judy, if what's his name's out, Sutton is out again. You got Amendola if Galladay's out. You got Gage if Jones is out. You got CeeDee Lamb, 4.7 in a very good matchup versus Atlanta. He did have like 6 targets in that first game, 5 receptions, 59 yards. He played like 82% of the snaps. He played a ton of this. They played a lot of wide receiver three receiver formations with Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb, which I did not talk about. What's his name? Where is he at? Gallup. I did not talk about Gallup, but he is also a good play at 5.6 in that really good matchup. CeeDee Lamb, like I said. Deontay Johnson had 10 targets in that first game. Not a bad play. He looked fairly good, but I think he comes down a little bit. I'll be surprised if he gets another 10 targets, honestly. Even Paris Campbell had 9 targets in this first game. And like I said, we saw what Rodgers did to him. I don't see Phillip Rivers can do the same thing. He has those games where he just blows up and has huge games. Playing Rivers with Campbell or just pieces of it, Campbell or Hilton. Doyle is out as well. I just seen that, so keep an eye on that. Targets to go a little everywhere. Doyle wasn't really heavily involved in the offense, but I assume that was just a game script thing. Scrolling down, I think that's really it down here. But like I said, Scotty Miller, I forgot at 4.1. if a guy like if any of those guys are out, Godwin or Evans, he got 6 targets for 73 receptions in that first game. I don't see why he can't put up better numbers with one of those guys off the field. We know how much he likes those little slot receivers, Tom Brady. So I think that's really it on the receiving end. Obviously Marvin Jones. Just keep an eye out on injuries is always the key thing. You got Kelsey up top. You got Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, obviously always on top. No issue with none of these guys. I had nothing bad to say about them. They're just pretty pricey. I think I prefer some receivers. Andrews is probably my favorite out of all these guys. If I was to pick one, it'd probably be Andrews. Evan Ingram, I know he didn't look good that first game, but he actually ran the most routes. More routes than any receiver on the team in that first game. I know he only had like 2.9 fantasy points, but when he's running more routes than every receiver on the team, it's just didn't happen to be his night. If he does that again, if he continues to do that all season, I don't see why he won't get more passes thrown his way eventually. And we know how good he can be when he's on the field, when he's healthy and on the field. Hawkinson, again, I like him for Green Bay if you want to play a Green Bay Detroit stack. Henry had a decent game, I think. 8 targets, 73 yards, nothing wrong with that. I assume they're behind again, so that's another GPP play. I still prefer Goddard over Ertz. I think Ertz, the defense will pay a lot of attention to Ertz. Maybe they'll try to find a way to get Ramsey on him and stuff like that, but Goddard will be the guy that goes overlooked, and with that, he will have 100 yards like he did last week and a touchdown. That's the upside that he can give you when Ertz is getting a lot of the double teams. And then you got Hurst. I like Hurst a lot. I think he ran, if I remember correctly, he ran the most routes out of any tight end on the main slate. I think Ingram might have beat him out, but on the main slate, Hurst ended up running the most routes, and he just didn't see the targets. He had 5 targets. Some of those targets that went to Gage probably should have gone to him, honestly, and I think that he gets a little more targets this week if the game turns into a shootout. 4.6. I have a good amount of interest in him. Jonnu Smith got a bump for me at 4.2. We don't know how much they pass. I don't expect Tannehill to throw it over 40 times again. I expect him to have a good game again, but like I said, no Brown. So obviously a guy like Jonnu Smith, and I actually didn't even talk about him, Corey Davis at 4K might not be a bad play. It says he's questionable. He's a limited participant, but I honestly doubt they go without both receivers. I feel like one of them will be. I feel Davis will be out there. If he is at 4K, I don't see why not take a chance on him. He looked very good that first game. Jacksonville just has to keep it close because if they get behind, then they're just going to run the ball down their throat with Henry. But we'll see how that goes. Scrolling down, I mentioned Gronkowski. If one of those guys is out, I don't think he really did much that first 3 targets. Maybe he gets a little more with them out. Howard, the same position. I don't think he did much either, did he? He had 6 targets. He actually did better than Gronk, so he might be a better play. But then you got Graham. Graham actually got some targets too. These are more GPP plays. A lot of the tight ends are always iffy. I feel like you really never know who's going to get the targets other than these top guys up top. But a lot of these are just, taking a chance on these guys. Some value, 3.6K. Logan Thomas, I actually have a lot of interest in him. He had 8 targets. And we know last season Arizona was the worst team versus tight ends. Across the board, they were the worst team. And, okay, they could have got a little better. But how much better? Do you think they go from last to first? No. They're still going to be one of the worst tight defenses versus the tight end position again this year. Kittle didn't do much last week, I know, but I expect Arizona gets ahead and these guys have to throw the ball. 8 targets. When this guy's out on the field, he's running a route. He's not there to pass block or run block or nothing. He's out there to go for a pass. And I like Logan Thomas at that price, 3.6. Obviously, Herndon at 3.4 is a good play with Crowder out. He did have 7 targets that first game. Had no yards. It was like 37 yards, but he played well as well. He's getting the targets. I mean, don't have an issue with that. If the quarterback's looking their way, I have interest in them, I'm interested if the quarterback's looking their way. But yeah, this is kind of my early core right now. If you're just making one lineup or a couple lineups, obviously I feel like the receiver Fuller is a little interchangeable with some of those other guys priced around him, but I like him. But Murray, Henry, Taylor, Fuller, and Thomas are kind of the way I'm looking at early on right now. And defense, I just kind of fill in whatever price I got, honestly. Try to play the best play. Hopefully they don't get blown out, I probably wouldn't recommend playing some of these really bad defenses like, I don't know, just the Giants. I don't know, just some of these bad defenses. But just try to play the defenses that you think can at least survive. And he should be in a good spot as long as these other spots are good. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you.